My husband took me to a party, one of those elegant gatherings where polished conversation mingles with the sparkle of champagne, and laughter veils the quiet ache of unfulfilled dreams. Andrew, ever the epitome of propriety and decorum, insisted I join him that evening. As we drove through softly lit city streets, I couldn't shake the persistent whisper of discontent, a yearning for something raw and transformative amid the safe predictability of my life. Upon arriving, the venue unfolded before me like a scene from a well-rehearsed play. The gentle hum of refined chatter, the glint of crystal under subdued lights, and the subtle notes of a live piano blended into an atmosphere that was both luxurious and suffocating. Andrew moved effortlessly among his acquaintances, exchanging pleasantries with an ease that underscored his contentment in our orderly existence. I, however, drifted through the crowd with a sense of detachment, my eyes searching for something that could awaken the dormant passion inside me. Then I saw him. Marcus stood apart from the rest, a striking presence marked by his deep, observant eyes and a smile that hinted at untold stories. There was an undeniable magnetism in the way he carried himself, a blend of confident allure and an unspoken promise of liberation. As our eyes met across the room, a jolt of recognition sparked within me, a feeling that transcended the ordinary confines of my everyday life. In the hours that followed, the distance between us shrank with every subtle glance and lingering touch. Marcus approached me with an easy charm, his voice low and inviting. Every word he spoke seemed to peel away the layers of my carefully guarded reserve, drawing forth emotions I had long suppressed. His hand brushed against mine lightly, sending ripples of excitement through my body, and with each whispered remark, he dismantled the boundaries I had once clung to. Before I realized it, the night had transformed into a cascade of sensations and forbidden allure. Marcus did things with me that I had never dared to imagine. Each act, each tender yet daring caress, pushed the limits of what I believed was acceptable. In his presence, I felt a profound sense of freedom. The weight of duty and societal expectation seemed to vanish, replaced by an exhilarating rush of passion that defied all conventions. His fearless intensity and the raw, unfiltered desire in his touch challenged every rule I had internalized, breaking every barrier that had once defined my identity. Yet, even as I surrendered to the overwhelming intensity of our encounter, a part of me remained painfully aware of Andrew's steady presence. I caught glimpses of him across the room, a figure of calm routine, oblivious to the tempest swirling around us. The stark contrast between his composed manner and the wild, liberating energy Marcus evoked underscored the monotony that had long stifled my spirit. In that charged moment, I felt the full force of a life I had outgrown, a life that offered security but little else. That night, as the party's glow dimmed into the early hours and the echoes of laughter faded away, I realized that every boundary had been pushed, every limit transcended. Marcus had ignited something deep within me, leaving behind a lingering mix of exhilaration and regret. The experience was a bittersweet revelation, a defiant leap into a realm where passion and risk intertwined, irrevocably altering the contours of my existence. In the quiet aftermath, I found myself torn between the comfort of a familiar life and the intoxicating promise of a future unbound by restraint. The party was a dazzling spectacle of light and sound, where laughter mingled with the delicate clink of champagne glasses, and soft music wove through the air like a familiar lullaby. I drifted among clusters of elegantly dressed guests, feeling both a part of the celebration and strangely detached from it all. The venue's walls shimmered with reflections of candlelight, and the rich scent of exotic perfumes mingled with the cool, crisp aroma of freshly cut flowers. Despite the luxurious surroundings, a quiet emptiness stirred within me. Andrew was deep in conversation, animated and at ease among his friends, his laughter a constant backdrop to the night's festivities. He moved effortlessly through the crowd, secure in the comfortable rhythm of his world, a world of predictable interactions and polite smiles. I, however, felt an undercurrent of longing that had nothing to do with the genteel atmosphere around me. As I stood by a marble pillar, watching the scene unfold, my attention was suddenly drawn to him. Marcus appeared as if out of nowhere, standing at the periphery of the gathering with a presence that demanded notice. His deep, thoughtful eyes swept across the room before locking onto mine, and in that fleeting moment, an unexpected spark ignited. There was an intensity in his gaze that was both inviting and enigmatic, a silent challenge to the constraints of my everyday life. His confident smile hinted at a life filled with passion and uncharted adventures, so different from the ordered existence I had known. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was an undeniable thrill, an excitement at the prospect of exploring something dangerous and new. On the other, a heavy weight of guilt settled over me, for here I was, feeling a pull towards a man who embodied everything I'd been taught to resist. As Marcus slowly moved closer, our eyes remained locked, the world around us fading into an indistinct hum. Every detail, the soft rustle of his clothes, the subtle warmth of his smile, the magnetic draw of his presence, seemed to speak directly to a part of me that had long been dormant. Our conversation began with simple, measured words, exchanged over the ambient backdrop of the party. His voice was low and smooth, each word imbued with a quiet intensity that made my heart race. It wasn't just the conversation, it was the small, deliberate gestures, a brush of his hand against mine, the lingering look that spoke volumes, that sent ripples of anticipation through me. In that moment, I was caught between two worlds. One was the safe, predictable life with Andrew, a life of familiarity and comfort. The other was the irresistible allure of Marcus, a promise of liberation and untamed passion. The spark that had been ignited with a single look now threatened to engulf me, challenging every boundary I had ever known. Amid the glittering splendor of the party, I found myself standing on the edge of a decision that would change everything. The party's energy pulsed around me, a constant intoxicating hum of voices, laughter, and clinking glasses. I found myself drifting away from the familiar orbit of my husband, Andrew, whose easy smile and steady presence had always represented a safe haven. But tonight, my heart beat faster with the thrill of uncertainty, and my eyes couldn't help but wander toward Marcus. Every time our gazes met across the room, I felt a jolt of electricity, as if the space between us had shrunk to nothing. His eyes held an unspoken invitation, a promise of passion that felt both dangerous and irresistibly freeing. I noticed the subtle way his lips curved when he looked at me, a quiet, confident smile that spoke of hidden adventures, waiting just beyond the confines of my orderly life. When he finally drew near, the air between us seemed to shift, becoming charged with anticipation. We exchanged a few soft words that were casual enough to pass unnoticed by the surrounding chatter, yet every syllable carried a weight of meaning that only we understood. His voice was low and persuasive, and even in those brief moments, it painted a picture of a world where passion reigned and social boundaries melted away. It wasn't merely the sound of his words, but the tender emphasis on certain phrases, the gentle cadence that hinted at both care and desire. I remember the moment our hands brushed against each other, an accidental contact, or perhaps something more intentional. The warmth of his skin against mine ignited a flurry of sensations that raced along my nerves. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt a mixture of fear and excitement, the kind that left me breathless and unsure whether I was daring to step into forbidden territory or simply awakening to a long dormant part of myself. In that fleeting contact, every sense was heightened. I became acutely aware of the soft murmur of the party, the distant sound of a jazz melody that seemed to underscore our secret exchange. The subtle scent of his cologne, rich, earthy, and slightly spicy, lingered around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of intimacy that was entirely my own. His eyes never left mine, and in them I saw a reflection of the desire I had tried so hard to suppress. As we continued our quiet dialogue in the midst of the celebration, every glance and every gentle touch served as a reminder of the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Marcus's words carried an unspoken promise of a different life, a life where the rules I'd always known dissolved into moments of exquisite vulnerability and raw emotion. With each soft-spoken remark, I felt the walls I had built around my heart start to crumble, allowing in a light that was both brilliant and blinding. Yet, even as I was drawn into this web of tantalizing possibilities, guilt whispered in the recesses of my mind. Andrew's steady, unassuming presence loomed in the background, a constant reminder of the life I was expected to lead, the familiar path I was supposed to follow. Torn between the comfort of routine and the allure of something daringly new, I was caught in a delicate balance, teetering on the edge of a decision that could redefine everything. The night carried on, and each subtle encounter with Marcus built an intensity that was both thrilling and terrifying. In those stolen moments wrapped in a cocoon of shared glances and barely there touches, I tasted the forbidden sweetness of a life unbound by convention. It was a sensation that promised liberation and whispered of undiscovered freedom, a promise that left me both exhilarated and profoundly conflicted. The party's clamour faded into a distant hum as Marcus and I slipped away into a quiet corner, away from prying eyes and the glittering throng. We found refuge on a secluded balcony tucked behind heavy curtains and framed by the soft glow of a solitary lamp. The cool night air brushed against my skin, a gentle reminder of the world beyond our hidden space, yet in that moment it felt as if only the two of us existed. Marcus's eyes, filled with a blend of warmth and determination, met mine as we settled into a silence heavy with unspoken words. We began to talk quietly, sharing secrets that had long remained buried beneath the surface. His voice, soft yet compelling, unravelled stories of hardship and dreams, each word carving out space for emotions I had kept locked away. I found myself confessing my own hidden desires and fears, surprised by the ease with which the walls I had built crumbled under his gentle insistence. The connection between us deepened with every whispered sentence, every shared glance that spoke of possibilities beyond the safe confines of my usual life. As he reached out, his hand brushed mine, a touch so delicate yet electrifying that it sent shivers cascading through me. That simple contact stirred something profound inside, igniting a spark that I had long thought extinguished. In that instant, all the boundaries I had so carefully maintained began to blur. I became aware of the duality of my feelings. On one hand, the rush of excitement and liberation was overwhelming, as if I was stepping into a world of raw passion and unfettered expression. On the other, a deep, nagging guilt tugged at me, a reminder of the promises I had made and the life I had always known. With each tender caress, Marcus drew me further into this forbidden embrace, challenging the limits I had once believed were immutable. Our conversation faded into a series of looks and touches that grew bolder with every passing moment. His hand slid slowly over my arm, and I felt an intoxicating mix of pleasure and trepidation. Each gentle kiss, each lingering caress was a step into uncharted territory, an act of defiance against the strictures that had defined me for so long. In that intimate space, I allowed myself to feel, to truly experience the exhilaration of being seen and desired in a way I never had before. Yet, even as the thrill of our closeness consumed me, there was a quiet voice within that warned of the cost of such freedom. I realized with a heavy heart that nothing could ever return to what it once was. In that fleeting, passionate exchange, I tasted both the sweetness of liberation and the bitterness of impending loss. Every touch, every shared breath, etched a memory that was as beautiful as it was forbidden, a reminder that the price of passion might be higher than I had ever imagined. The party's atmosphere shifted suddenly, as if someone had dimmed the lights and replaced the cheerful music with a heavy silence. Laughter and clinking glasses were still there, but a charged energy began to ripple through the room. I felt it deep in my bones, a mix of anticipation and dread, as subtle whispers and knowing glances started to circulate among the guests. I was standing close to Marcus, and with every shared look, the space between us seemed to shrink. His gentle touch, light as a whisper, sent sparks racing through me. Then, boldly and without hesitation, he reached out and drew me near. In the midst of the crowd, with all eyes seemingly fixed on us, he kissed me, a soft, defiant kiss that held the promise of passion and the risk of everything I had known. It was a moment that broke through the surface of decorum, stirring emotions that had been dormant for far too long. Almost immediately, I sensed a shift in the room's energy. The light banter and casual smiles gave way to a palpable tension. I could see Andrew standing not too far away, his expression transforming from relaxed amusement to a deep, pained disbelief. His eyes, usually so kind and steady, now flickered with hurt and confusion as they locked onto us. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in my ears as the gravity of the moment hit me. My cheeks flushed and my hands began to tremble, not just from the thrill of the kiss, but from the sudden awareness that my world was shifting irreversibly. The once festive air was now thick with unspoken questions and the sting of betrayal. I felt as if I were caught in a silent struggle between two competing truths, the magnetic pull of an awakening desire and the heavy anchor of the life I had built with Andrew. Marcus's touch was both a balm and a spark, igniting a freedom I had never known while also unraveling the fabric of my familiar existence. Andrew started making his way toward us, each step deliberate and filled with a sorrow that cut deeper than any harsh word could. His approach transformed the room into a stage where every gaze, every murmur, amplified the intensity of our private drama. I stood frozen, caught in the crossroads of longing and regret, knowing that the moment we shared was both a liberation and a breach, a crossing of lines I had always thought unbreakable. In that brief, charged encounter, I could feel the weight of every boundary I had ever known slipping away. The kiss, bold and reckless in its beauty, now seemed to mark the end of a carefully controlled life. As Andrew drew nearer, his presence a stark reminder of the consequences of every choice, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The exhilaration of that kiss mingled with a deep sorrow, each emotion vying for space in my heart as I stood at the precipice of an unknown future. The room's atmosphere shifted abruptly as Andrew's presence loomed near, his eyes dark with hurt and disbelief. The soft murmur of conversations and clinking of glasses gave way to a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to engulf us all. Andrew's voice, usually calm and steady, now trembled with a mix of anger and sorrow. "How could you do this?" he demanded, his tone both accusing and pained. Every word struck me like a blow, forcing me to confront the reality of what had just transpired. I stood, frozen, feeling the weight of his disappointment and the depth of the betrayal in every syllable he uttered. The laughter and light-hearted chatter that had filled the party earlier were now replaced by murmurs and sidelong glances. The shift in the room was palpable, a collective understanding that something irreparable had occurred. Andrew's eyes, filled with a raw blend of love and devastation, bore into mine as he struggled to process the shattered remnants of our once secure life. Nearby, Marcus remained quiet, his role in this unfolding drama as ambiguous as ever. His expression was a mixture of defiance and remorse, his gaze shifting between us as if silently asking whether the passion that had drawn us together was worth this devastation. There was no clear hero or villain in his stance, just an unspoken challenge to everything that I had believed about loyalty and desire. His presence was a constant reminder that boundaries had been crossed, boundaries I once thought were unassailable. Andrew's voice grew louder, each word laced with a deep-seated pain that reverberated in the charged air. "You knew what you were risking," he said, his words harsh and unforgiving. "I trusted you." The accusation cut through the lingering warmth of the evening, leaving only the cold sting of betrayal in its wake. I wanted to speak, to explain the inner turmoil that had driven me to this precipice, but the words felt inadequate, lost amidst the overwhelming surge of emotion. A heavy silence fell once more, broken only by the soft, measured tone of Marcus. "Maybe there was something missing, something you never admitted to yourself," he remarked quietly, his words not meant to provoke but to expose the unspoken truth that had always simmered beneath the surface. His comment added another layer to the fracture, a reminder that our lives were now tangled in a web of unmet desires and hidden resentments. In that moment it became painfully clear that nothing would ever be the same. The foundation of trust and comfort on which our life had been built lay in ruins, replaced by an uncertain future marked by shattered illusions and lingering regret. I felt as though I was standing at the edge of an abyss, the familiar world of our shared past fading into a distant memory. The choices made in this instant had redrawn the boundaries of our lives, leaving us all to navigate a new reality where passion and betrayal intermingled, and where the cost of a single moment could never be undone. After the party, everything felt irrevocably different. The lively hum of conversations and the warmth of shared laughter that once filled our home had faded into a heavy, almost oppressive silence. Each step I took through the familiar halls reminded me that nothing was as it had been. The once vibrant living room now seemed barren, its empty chairs and dimmed lights reflecting a void I hadn't known existed before. I wandered slowly through the quiet, darkened spaces, noticing how the mirrors on the walls no longer showed the same reflection I was used to. Instead, they revealed a woman marked by secrets and silent regrets, a woman whose eyes held questions and fears that were too overwhelming to ignore. The air felt cold, as if the echoes of that night's events still lingered, casting long shadows over every corner of our once warm sanctuary. The taste of freedom and passion from that unforgettable night still clung to me. Marcus's touch had awakened something deep within, a desire for a life unburdened by routine and expectations. For a moment I had felt truly alive, as if every cell in my body was resonating with a long-suppressed yearning. Yet that awakening came with a price. The exhilaration was tainted by an inescapable guilt, a reminder of the promises I had made and the safe, predictable life I had always known with Andrew. The thrill of that forbidden connection was now intertwined with sorrow, a sorrow for the innocence and trust that had been shattered in its wake. I could sense the change not only in my heart but in the whispers that began circulating among friends and acquaintances. Those who had once admired our quiet stability now exchanged glances filled with pity and disapproval. Andrew himself had become a distant presence, his eyes avoiding mine as if the hurt was too raw to face. The comfortable, secure bond we once shared was crumbling, replaced by a tension that was impossible to ignore. Every conversation, every sidelong glance was laden with the unspoken truth of that night, a truth that refused to fade into the background. In the stillness of the long, lonely nights, I found myself wrestling with conflicting emotions. Part of me celebrated the liberation of embracing desires that had long been suppressed, a spark of passion that promised to redefine who I was. Yet another part of me mourned the loss of certainty and the betrayal of a life built on familiar comforts. I questioned whether this daring step had been a courageous move toward self-discovery or a reckless abandonment of everything that had once given me security. Sitting quietly, I stared into the mirror, searching for answers in the eyes that seemed both familiar and foreign. I longed for a resolution, a way to reconcile the fierce yearning for freedom with the deep-seated need for stability. The reflection offered no clear guidance, only the somber truth that every choice carries a cost. Now, every day felt like a delicate balancing act between clinging to the remnants of a predictable past and daring to embrace a future fraught with both promise and peril. The silence of our home became a constant reminder of that irreversible night. Every empty room, every darkened corner, echoed with the memory of passion and the lingering weight of loss. As time slowly marched on, I knew I stood at a crossroads. One path led back to the life I had once known, while the other beckoned with the uncertain allure of a new, uncharted self. In that uncertain space, I was forced to confront the undeniable truth that nothing would ever be the same again. I sit in the quiet of an early morning, the soft light filtering through my window, and I feel the weight of every choice I have made. The events of the past weeks have left me suspended between two very different lives. On one hand, there is the comfortable, familiar life I built with Andrew, a life marked by routine, security, and a promise of stability. On the other, there is the memory of a night when passion and freedom burst through every barrier, when Marcus's touch and the taste of his kiss awakened a part of me that I had long kept hidden. Every day now feels like a silent battle between what was and what might be. I look at an old photograph hanging on the wall, a snapshot of a time filled with laughter and soft promises. That image reminds me of the life I once believed in, yet now I see that those promises have begun to crumble. The familiar smile in the picture contrasts sharply with the uncertainty I feel today, a sense that everything I knew is slowly fading away. The door to my room is left slightly ajar, a quiet invitation to step forward into a new chapter. That half-open door has become a symbol of my current state of limbo, a constant reminder that I stand at the threshold of a decision I must one day make. On one side lies the safety of a predictable existence, and on the other, an unknown future filled with both exhilaration and risk. I can feel the pull of that uncharted path, a path that promises the liberation of embracing my true self, even if it means leaving behind all that is familiar. As I run my hand along the cool metal of the door handle, I recall every moment of that fateful night, the lingering warmth of Marcus's hand, the spark that ignited when our eyes met, and the taste of freedom that followed. At the same time, the memory of Andrew's steady, pained gaze tugs at me, a reminder of the life that once offered me comfort. The passion I experienced has left an indelible mark on my heart, but it has also shattered the foundation of trust and certainty I once clung to. I sit with these conflicting emotions, feeling both the sting of loss and the thrill of possibility. The silence in the room speaks volumes, echoing the questions that now define my existence. Can I reclaim the safety of a familiar past, or do I dare to venture into a future filled with both promise and peril? My heart is caught in this delicate balance, urging me to listen to its quiet, persistent beat. In this moment of stillness, I realize that the future is not set in stone. I stand at the crossroads of two very different paths, each carrying its own weight and consequence. The decision is not one I can force today. It will come with time, as I learn to accept both the loss and the possibility of what lies ahead. For now, I keep the door slightly open, a gentle invitation to all the possibilities that tomorrow may bring, and I hold on to the hope that I will one day find the courage to choose the life that feels most true to who I am.